Okay, thank you panel members for your lively comments and answers to the questions. I just want to go around the panel and just see what top tips people have got, so to speak. So if you can imagine, if you went back to before you started your undergraduate dissertation, your PhD thesis, what would be the one important thing that you would tell yourself that would give you some sort of reassurance and help that would have made things just a lot easier for you?
There are two things as far as I'm concerned. One was keep things tidy. I'm notorious for working in what looks like a pile of paper. It's actually my desk. But when it comes to doing research, I have to have all my references in one place. I've been burnt badly before in my PhD when I lost a key reference in my introduction and had to face either rewriting the whole introduction the night before I was submitting. Let's not go into that one. Or finding that reference. I found the reference. From that point on, I keep them all in one file. This way, they don't get lost. I may not need them, but at least they're there. And one advice, or piece of advice that my supervisor gave me years ago when I started my PhD was, don't write for yourself. Write for an audience. And that audience is not your supervisor. It's somebody else who doesn't know anything about your work. If you can convince that audience that your argument is valid, you can show the audience that the train of thought that went into the analysis, then you have done a good piece of research writing. And you literally invent yourself a person, or take some hapless family member or a friend and make them your audience. That's who you deliver it to. So if your audience comes up with questions like, I don't understand what you're on about, that means your text isn't getting the point across.
Two things. One is going to be something people must think of or do, and the other is what people must not do. What people must do in writing dissertations is to be very, very systematic. You need to be disciplined. I think that quite a number of students underestimate the demand of the independent study or dissertation. And whether that is because they have not done something like that before, or that they are assuming it will be the same as maybe a 1,500 word essay, which some people say they can do within a few days, some of them in a few hours. We always know which ones. So the first thing is really, do not underestimate the demand of an IS, independent study. This work plan is really critical if you're going to avoid unnecessary consumption of Valium. The don't do is, if at all possible, do not go to Facebook to find solutions to IS problems. And there are always people there advising and all sorts. What I know is it creates unnecessary panic.
The one thing that would have made it easier if I'd started out with a clearer question quite early on. I had a sort of very amorphous thing that I was area that I was interested in, and then kept doing stuff with it, but never was quite sure what exactly I was actually trying to achieve. And it took me quite some time to sort of narrow it down and come up with a sort of question that I was setting myself that I wanted to find out, that I wanted to answer. And that made it quite a stressful experience at times. So if my supervisor tended to sort of lean over slightly menacingly and go, what's the question? Stare at me. So I think sort of thinking of a question or a hypothesis in some way, shape or form early on, that'll guide you through your research, that'll direct your research. It can be very useful and would have helped me, I think, if I found it earlier on.
To me, it would have been more organised note-taking, and going back to that again, because I love the research, I love the finding out. but I can be indiscriminate about what I'm making notes about. You know, write everything down. And then you have this big problem with actually writing everything up because everything's in a mess. You know, I mean, you've taken a load of books and journal articles and just reduced it to a stack of paper, which is still unorganized. So to me, it would have been about organizing my notes, thinking about what I'm reading, thinking about what my point is going to be as I'm going along, rather than collecting the notes and then thinking about it afterwards. So I'd have done it differently now.
I think the one thing that I'd go back and tell myself is just to have a little bit more confidence in what I was doing. I remember when I finished my dissertation, I thought back to something my driving instructor told me the day before I did my test. I was very, very worried, very anxious about what the test would involve, and he said, it is not a test at all. You have done all of the skills required to pass that test already. You've shown me that you can do all of the things you need to do. All you're doing is bringing it all together in one place, and it's not a test, it is a demonstration of how things should be done and how you do things. And I think if I would have told myself that, I would have saved myself a little bit of unnecessary panic, to be honest.
I think on a practical level it's important to take at least one whole day off a week and take some time out, completely step away from it. And if possible, which I was able to do, I know not everybody is able to do, but try and take a couple of days away somewhere where you can just dedicate yourself to that process. That is what you are there for, and dedicate that time to doing that, and you're removing yourself from all those other distractions. And it's you know, it's a privilege to be able to do that, but if you can do, then please do.
Mine would be not to overcomplicate it. In a similar way, I had a very broad subject, and it covered 2 countries, and it was enormous. And it took me a while, really, to get it back in focus, to condense it down. So I overread. I couldn't tell you, well, I daren't tell you how many books I read. Huge number of books, because I hadn't actually focused down and really condensed my area of study. So I could have written 25,000 words on my dissertation quite easily. I had done too much work. So really, I can't emphasise enough not to overcomplicate your area of research. Make sure you get the structure right, and just keep it simple so that you can actually go into depth in the area of study and not stress yourself out.
I think I might have been a bit more careful about drinking red wine. From a PhD, it took me 9 years to do a PhD, part-time, while I was running a business and raising a family and moving house and so on. In that time, I think what I learned eventually was that what it takes to manage your thesis is really learning to manage everything else. So it's managing everything around it, which just didn't occur to me till, I don't know, about year 6, I think. So managing everything around it to make space for it, so you have got time to think about it, so you've got undisturbed time to think about it, rather than cobbling something together here and there, was the thing I basically needed. In the end, I had to whittle down from just under 500,000 words, and I was forced to whittle it down to 100,000 words. So that editing process I was talking about was a severely vicious process, and I've still got filing cabinets of stuff that I've taken out. I think that's still quite good. I've got lots of journal articles out of it since then, so fair enough. But it was the managing of the logistics surrounding doing this kind of work that were, for me, the biggest bugbear and the thing that I most had to learn.
Mine sounds a bit of a cliche now because everyone says it so often, but I tend to say keep calm and carry on, because I find I want to write the whole project in one go, when actually I need to sort of just work on it a little bit every day, and it's a gradual process.
I'd say 2 things. I think the first thing is to remember that anything that you're writing that you want an audience to pay attention to, you're telling a story. What is your argument? What is the narrative? What is the story you're going to tell? What's relevant to the story goes in. What's not relevant does it. And that's how you keep your word count below 10,000, and that's how you keep it relevant. Keep everything focused on the story that you are telling. What is the argument that you are making? And the second thing I would say was, it may seem like an odd thing to say, but it goes back to something Lovemore said earlier, is allow yourself to enjoy it. This is your opportunity to not be restricted. This is your opportunity to look at the thing you want to look at in the way you want to look at it. And, you know, if you're passionate about your subject, this is a real opportunity for you to really throw yourself into something and really enjoy the process, enjoy the research, enjoy producing something new, and allow yourself to enjoy it. Don't think that, you know, you have to be suffering for it to be good. It's okay to enjoy it and to feel good about it.